Chapter 42. Tennyson looked around the campsite and nodded contentedly. For several days converts to the Outsiders cult had been coming into the camp. Now that they were gathered, he was ready to move in and whip them into a state of religious frenzy so they would be willing to hand over their gold and valuables to him, just as they had done in Hibernia. It was a task in which he excelled. The numbers were smaller here, of course, but they would be enough to provide him with enough booty for a fresh start somewhere else. Hibernia and Araluan were becoming increasingly dangerous for him, and he planned to escape to a new location. He hadn't told his followers that he was planning to take the valuables they had collected and abscond with them. They all assumed that he would begin rebuilding the Outsiders cult here in northern Araluan, and he was content to let them continue thinking that. He felt no loyalty toward the people who followed him. As he had the thought, he frowned, wondering what had become of the Genevesian Bakari. It had been days now since the mercenary had reported in. He knew that the leader of his pursuers had been fatally injured in the confrontation in the drowned forest. Bakari had seen him wounded by a poisoned bolt, and he was definite in his assurances that there was no way the cloaked stranger could survive that wound. That was good news. The other two were little more than boys, and Tennyson was confident that without their leader they would soon become discouraged, give up on the pursuit, and return to wherever it was they'd come from. The fact that there had been no sign of them for the past few days seemed to confirm the idea. He knew they had been close on his heels for weeks. Now they had simply disappeared. Perhaps Bakari had killed them, and been killed himself in the final confrontation with them. That was a possibility. More likely, he thought, the Genevesian had simply slipped away and left the country. After all, he had seen 2 of his compatriots killed, and mercenaries like him had only one loyalty: to money. It was unlikely that he would continue to fight for Tennyson when he knew that he was outnumbered and outmatched. But he had served his purpose. He had killed the leader of Tennyson's pursuers, and one way or another caused the other 2 to abandon their pursuit. And this way, there was no need for Tennyson to pay him the final installment of the fee he had been promised. All in all, he thought, it had turned out well. The last of the local converts had arrived at the camp that morning. Tomorrow he would break camp here and move them to the cave complex that had been picked out for that purpose. He would inflame them and excite them, as he had done with so many simple country folk before, and persuade them to contribute their gold and jewels to build another altar to Alcaius. Then, when the time was right, he would quietly slip away with it. With the last of the Genevesians dead, Halt expressed his doubt that Tennyson would send anyone else back to spy on them or monitor their progress. In fact, he hoped that the preacher would assume they had given up the chase. After all, he told them, while they were preparing to leave the campsite, Bakari would have told him that he hit me with a poisoned bolt, and since Tennyson knows nothing about Malcolm here, he probably thinks that I'm dead. Horace and I could be still following him, Will pointed out. Halt looked doubtful. Possibly, but he knows you're both young, and he doesn't know you as well as I do. Chances are he will have seen me as the real threat. I don't know whether to be insulted by that or not, Horace said. Halt grinned easily at him. As I said, he doesn't know you as well as I do. He's an arrogant man, and he'll probably think you're too young to offer any threat to him. But just in case, he said, looking at Will, you'd better take the point. Will nodded. It was never wise to assume too much. He touched Tug's ribs with his heels and galloped ahead to scout the way. He reined in when he was about 400 meters ahead, and maintained that distance. Malcolm, who was riding double with Horace, watched the distant figure as he scouted the land ahead of them, quartering back and forth to make sure there was no one waiting in ambush on the other side of the trail they were following. Will reminded the healer of a hound, questing for a scent. "He's a remarkable young man," he had said to Halt, and he saw the small glow of pride in the bearded ranger's eyes as he turned his saddle to reply. "The best," he said briefly. "You've known him how long?" Malcolm asked. "Since he was a small boy. I first noticed him when he slipped into Master Chubb's kitchen to steal some pies." "Master Chubb?" Malcolm asked. Halt grinned at the memory of that day. "He's the head chef at Castle Redmont. A formidable man, wouldn't you say, Horace?" Horace grinned in his turn. "He's deadly with that wooden ladle," he said. "Fast and accurate, and very painful. I once suggested that he give a ladle-whacking lessons to battle school students." "You were joking, of course," Malcolm said. Horace looked thoughtful before he replied. "You know, not entirely." "So," Malcolm said, turning back to Halt, "what did you have to say to Will when you caught him stealing those pies, and apparently risking life and limb to do so?" "Oh, I didn't let on that I was there. We Rangers can be very unobtrusive when we choose," he said in mock modesty. "I remained out of sight and watched him. I thought then that he had the potential to be a Ranger." Malcolm nodded, but an anomaly in the sequence of the story had Horace frowning thoughtfully. "Why?" he asked Halt. Halt looked quickly at him. Something in Horace's tone set off alarms in his mind. Horace lately had a tendency to ask awkward questions, he thought. He answered carefully. "Why?" "Because he was excellent at moving from cover to cover and remaining unseen. Chubb came into the room 3 times and never noticed him, so I thought, if he could manage that without formal training, he'd make a good Ranger." "No," said Horace deliberately. "That wasn't what I meant. I meant, why did you remain unseen? Why were you hiding in the kitchen in the first place?" "I told you," Halt said with an edge in his voice. "I was watching Will to see if he might have the potential to be a Ranger, so I didn't want him to see that I was watching." "Well, that's not what you said," Horace replied. A little furrow had formed between his eyebrows. "Yes, it is." Halt's answers were becoming shorter and shorter. Malcolm leaned back behind Horace's broad form to hide a smile. Halt's tone indicated that he no longer wanted to discuss this matter, but Horace wasn't inclined to give up. "No, you said, when Malcolm asked, that this was the first time you'd noticed Will, so you couldn't have gone to the kitchen to see what he was going to get up to. You hadn't noticed him before that day. That's what you said," he added, driving his point home. "That's true, you did say that," Malcolm chipped in helpfully, and he was rewarded with a glare from Halt. "Does it matter?" Halt asked. Horace shrugged. "Not really, I suppose. I just wondered why you'd gone to the kitchen and why you took the trouble to remain unseen. Were you hiding from Master Chubb yourself? And Will just turned up by coincidence?" "And why would I be hiding from Master Chubb in his own kitchen?" Halt challenged. Again Horace shrugged innocently. "Well, there was a tray of freshly made pies airing in the window-sill, wasn't there? And you're quite fond of pies, aren't you, Halt?" Halt drew himself up very straight in the saddle. "Are you accusing me of sneaking into that kitchen to steal the pies for myself? Is that it?" His voice and body language simply reeked of injured dignity. "Of course not, Halt." Horace hurried to assure him, and Halt's stiff shoulder form relaxed a little. "I just thought I'd give you the opportunity to confess," Horace added. This time Malcolm couldn't conceal his sudden explosion of laughter. Halt gave them both a withering glance. "You know, Horace," he said at length, "you used to be a most agreeable young man. Whatever happened to you?" Horace turned a wide grin on him. "I've spent too much time around you, I suppose," he said, and Halt had to admit that was probably true. Later that day they reached the spot where Will had fought with Bakari. Will signaled for them to stop before they crested the final ridge. Then he and Halt crept forward to survey the ground ahead. The campsite that he had seen previously was now deserted. "They've moved on," Will said, and Halt rested his weight on his elbows, chewing a blade of grass thoughtfully. "Wherever it is they're going," he agreed. "How many would you say were there?" Will considered his answer for a few seconds before replying. "It was a big camp," he said. "I'd say up to 100 people." They rose and walked back down the slight slope to where Horace and Malcolm were preparing a quick meal of cold meat, fruit, and bread. "Is there time to make coffee?" Horace asked. Halt nodded. "There's always time for coffee," He sat down by the small fire that Horace had built and glanced at Malcolm. He liked the healer and knew he had a good analytical head on his shoulders. "Tennyson's party has joined up with a larger group," he said. "What would you make of that?" Malcolm paused thoughtfully. "From what you've told me about his methods, I'd say the bulk of them are probably converts to his religion, people who've been living in this area." "That's what I thought. He usually has 20 or so in his inner circle, the ones who know the whole religion is a fake. They run things for him. They collect the money. But the bulk of his followers are gullible country folk who actually believe his brand of nonsense." "But where would they have come from, Halt?" Horace asked. "I thought you and Crowley destroyed the Outsiders movement in Araluin." Halt shook his head. "We did our best. We got rid of the hierarchy, but you can never stamp out these cults entirely. They'll move into remote areas like this and recruit the locals. He's probably had agents in this area for the past 6 months or so, just the way he was doing in Chelsea." "And it would have been a simple matter to send a messenger ahead to arrange that rendezvous point in the valley," Will put in. "Exactly. And now he's gathering his people together for another push. They'll keep recruiting, and then when they have the numbers, they'll move on to the next area, just as they did in Hibernia." Halt shook his head angrily. "They're like vermin. You stamp them out in one place, and they rise up again in another." Malcolm nodded. "It's interesting, isn't it, how people are so ready to believe these charlatans. You realize you'll have more to do than just stamp this group out, don't you?" Halt looked up at him. He had a good idea what the balding healer was talking about. "How's that?" he asked. Malcolm pursed his lips and leaned forward, idly poking a stick into the glowing coals of the fire. "If people believe him, if they've accepted the line of claptrap he's peddling, it won't be enough to take him prisoner and put him on trial, or even kill him, if that's what you had in mind." Halt nodded wearily. "I know," he said. "A public trial would give him the forum he needs, and if he dies, he'll become a martyr. Either way, another person will step up to take his place and build on the doubt and uncertainty that he's raised in the people's minds. It'll be one long repeating cycle." "Exactly," Malcolm agreed. "So, there's only one course for you to follow. You have to discredit him. You have to prove to these followers of his that he is a cheat and a liar and a thief." "We managed to do it in Clonmel," Horace said. "We caught him unawares there, with the legend of the Sunrise Warrior, and we tricked him into pinning everything on trial by combat. He won't fall for that again. This time, we'll have to do something new, something he's not expecting." "Like what?" Will asked, and Halt gave him a tired smile again. "When I think of it, you'll be the first to know."